We know how much you love talking about player feedback, and we do too. What's up, everybody? This is Let's Talk Customer Feedback, and I'm your host, Natalie. Thanks for listening, and thanks for telling your Player Insights Pro friends about us. This is Season 3, so let's get right into it. The gaming industry expects another booming year in both excitement and sales. But with the launch of many new games comes the realization that the market becomes even more crowded and the bar is raised yet again in all aspects, including games' complexity levels, design, story, and character features. So, can leveraging player feedback help with this? Let's find out with today's special guest. Leveraging player feedback from the community to optimize games. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Let's Talk Customer Feedback. Today we have the pleasure of hosting Kristian Kanne, Senior Community Manager at Wargaming. First, let's say hi to Kristian. How are you doing today?
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm doing great. What about you?
I'm great, thank you. We're super excited to have you here. So before we dive into the player insights, we would love to hear about you and would love to get you to know you and the audience to get to know you better before we start. So our first question for you is, what's your favorite video game?
So I'm a player who usually sticks to one type of game for a long time unless I find something new. So I'm currently playing Lost Ark, which has been released in the Western region in the beginning of the year. It's a Korean MMO that has been around for 2 years. But when it comes to all-time favorite, it's probably To the Moon. It's a game from the Freebird game studio. And probably Dust and Elysian Tale, just because this game was designed by a single person, game design, artworks. Everything was created by a single independent designer, so I can highly recommend those two games.
That's amazing. I love indie games. Actually, we also have, we've been connecting a lot with indie developers and designers, and it's just amazing everything that they do. And it's as you say, most of the times a one-man show. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
And for our next question, so if you'd have a time machine, would you travel to the past or the future, and to when?
I actually thought a while about this question. So I thought okay, what would be interesting in the past and what would be interesting in the future? And I was I wouldn't probably want to travel in the future. If I could, I would probably travel 30 years into the past, bring a little bit of footage from today's climate events, and just hopefully we'll be able to show it to the people in charge and say this is how you're going to mess up in 30 years. So please do the changes now. So yeah, that's because everything that's happening now, it's only get worse.
You're totally right. And I actually love that, because it's not that you want to see something specifically, you want to really change the world.
Yeah. There are always these questions what would you do? Would you travel back and, get rid of a single person? I asked myself that question as well. And then I was nah, the thing is, all these events that happened because of one single person, it's more, multiple people involved. So that wouldn't really change anything severely. So I was yeah, but, climate is an important topic today.
For everybody. I agree with you. And lastly, can you tell us how you got into the industry and what do you do today?
I try to break this a little bit down because it's a long story. I started in the industry in Wargaming, where I am now, but I was a player. So I played World of Warships. Game was released 2015, started playing when it was released, and started playing in the competitive scene, tournaments, world championships. And this is how I ended up in a competitive clan. And I was able to visit people in France, friends that I met through playing. I visited Paris. And in Paris was the old Wargaming office with the community management team from World of Warships. So they got to know me, and they kind of asked me like half a year later that they were looking for a community manager for World of Warships Legends, which was an unreleased console title of the same game I played on PC. And yeah, I applied and I got the job, and that's how I moved to Prague. So I started working out at Wargaming as a community manager, and then got a senior community manager role for World of Warships. And then in December, I moved over to World of Tanks console, where I am now.
That's awesome. It's really funny. I can truly understand what you mean, because I was a customer of Affogata as well in my previous company, and now I work at Affogata. So it is a pretty cool feeling to be the customer and then to be able to work at the company, really like make a change probably from the inside.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
So thank you for telling a bit more about you, Kristian. And with that story in mind, we can't wait to hear what Kristian has to say about all this. So let's start. So you already told us about how you entered Wargaming, but can you introduce us a bit to your role in the company and what do you do as a senior community manager?
Yeah. So me as a senior community manager, I do everything from player support, collecting feedback, talking to the players on several different platforms, helping organize events. Like currently we are reestablishing the competitive scene in World of Tanks console. So I'm helping them with prizes, exposure, portal articles. And this is, it's a very broad palette of what I have to do or what I'm doing. We are discussing a lot with the development team, which is related to player feedback. So yeah, you have your hand in everything a little bit. Like we talk to live operation team. Sorry, I interrupted you. Please.
No. I interrupted you, so don't worry.
No, I just made a long pause, so I can understand why you thought I would be done. But my job is to to be involved in everything, to know about the game, to know about the development cycle, to be able to prepare messages if it's a bug that is new in the game, something that we are resolving, or what our plans in the future are. So it's just to be up to date with everything that's going on, that is coming, and just to know how the players are feeling.
Definitely. And now that you just told us that you were a player yourself, do you feel more connected to the players? Like you truly understand what they mean and their pains, and how does it differentiate you from the ones that maybe were not players before?
So there were surely some moments when I was in discussions with players and they brought up like, you don't understand what we are feeling and you cannot relate to us. And then I was like, I can, because I used to play in the competitive scene. I know exactly how you feel, because I consider myself a part of the core hardcore audience. I might not know as much as the current hardcore core players of World of Tanks console, because I don't have that much experience, but I know exactly on how passionate players can be and how important it is for them to have the game succeed. So I can relate to them, and I feel as much pain sometimes when I see something is not working out correctly, or, things could have gone differently, or when I see that some features that would have been implemented are delayed, because things in development are not always perfect. And, things are not always coming as expected. So yeah, I understand both sides. Like that is to me, as a long-term player and as someone who knows the inside of the development, I can understand both sides, and I'm doing my best to communicate this correctly, because I can relate to the player, but I also can explain to the players like why this is the case, why something is not working, or why not something is not coming when they expected it. So yeah.
Makes total sense. And with this, it will lead us to our next question, which is basically, if you can share with us and tell us a bit, how does this player feedback influence your day-to-day position?
A lot. So our game is a game that has weekly updates. Like every Tuesday, we either have content changes or balance changes, or now, for example, we have our Halloween themed week until the end of October, beginning of November. So this means we have a lot of feedback every week. So new feedback, new content, new changes. So based on this, like usually when content is being introduced and we gather the feedback, we just try to forward opinions from players to the development team, how we might influence it in the future. And especially if new content is being released, if there are new bugs, because that is something that we are working on really fast with our development team and the players. So yeah,
it's great, that way of communication. It makes everything more efficient and more agile to like get these feedback in real time and make the changes quickly.
Yes.
And so as you're part in being part of the community in Wargaming, in your opinion, how important and intertwined is the level of the community engagement and the level of player churn?
You definitely need to be connected with your community, and you need to know what they think and what is happening, because if you don't act accordingly and if you don't provide information, players will at some point turn their backs on you as a developer, because players don't want to be disappointed. Like even if something doesn't work out, transparent and honest communication is the most important thing to the players. Even if you screw up badly, even if something doesn't work out, if you put yourself on a stage and you just say, guys, we screwed up, we're sorry, we're working on to resolve this issue, they will be happy. And they will, I mean, of course, they are probably disappointed, but they think that you're doing the best that you can.
Right.
Now, you also need to pay attention to them, and because if they see that you're not communicating with the players and they are up to date on what's coming, they might find interest in something else. So I personally think that community engagement itself is very important to keep, especially the core hardcore audience, with you as a developer.
But it must be hard to find, like, if there is a big community, how can you know who are the hardcore gamers, and how can you differentiate them?
So we consider the hardcore core audience the players who actively communicate in several different communities.
Got it.
So you have, of course, the players who play a couple of hours during the week, but that's it. Like, they don't interact on social media. If you look at the player base itself of games, you usually have like 3, 4, maximum 5% of the players interacting. So the players that you see on Discord, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, those are the ones who really, really care about your game, because otherwise they wouldn't.
Passion.
Yes, otherwise they wouldn't put in the effort to talk about the game, and they want to be part of a community. So that is how you usually can differentiate your player base.
Right, it makes sense. And how do you maintain a player community active? What are the main tactics you utilize to make sure that the community keeps being active and keeps bringing players to talk about certain features or the game or whatever?
So we have several different steps, I would say. First of all, we have our weekly streams where we utilize them to connect to the players. We have one Tuesdays where I do like a content update stream for 2 hours where I play the game, answer questions on stream, talk to the players, play with other players. And then we have a developer stream Fridays where we go through things that happened this week, things that are going to happen the week after, And then we have a Q&A section. The stream is about an hour long, so it's like half-half, usually half an hour for questions and where players can ask questions about content for the future and so on. And that's one thing. Then we have, of course, our news portal where our content team is working non-stop to inform the players about changes, content, what's happening this week, what special missions there are. And that's like our main communication that we use. But we are two people in the community management team. We are a social media manager, my colleague Kristian, and myself as the community manager. But we have a program, which is our community contributor program, and we separate these people in two groups. We have the ones that create Twitch streams, YouTube videos, which are our contributors, and we have our ambassadors, which take care of, for example, our subreddit, which has 22,000 members, or of the biggest Facebook group, which have around 18,000 members. And we are in direct line with these people. So if we are spending a lot of time in social media networks to find information or read issues, but we always go back to these people and ask them, hey, did we miss anything? So we utilize key members of the community that just help us out. And it's like a mutual relationship because they get some special information from us. We get important information from the community. And it's just like a symbiosis, I would say. We work together, and this is very important, in my opinion, because it lets you connect to the communities very direct. If you miss something, or if you just want to spread a message, so you just have to spread it to this person, and they can spread it even more. So it's like a snowball system.
Yeah, and it's a win-win, both for the community and for the company, definitely.
Yeah.
So with this in mind, that you mentioned that you have such big communities, there must be a lot of noise in all of these conversations in the community. So how do you handle all of this data, and how do you manage to find the most important feedback, especially when you say from your core players?
Yeah, so one of these steps is, just as I explained, with the key members of the community, that we reach out and we ask them, hey, is anything happen? Is there a bug that we missed? Or is there a big issue that we need to address? Or was there any hot topic discussion in your communities that we are missing? And then, of course, and I think you know where this is going, we are utilizing Affogata that we started working with around 3 months ago. So this platform allows us to just measure community sentiment. And this goes through all of our social medias. So if we, for example, notice that we had an update and we get a lot of negative sentiment because something is not working accordingly, we immediately are able to see it through Affogata. And then we can reach out in detail to the people and ask, like, hey, we saw that there's something going wrong. Do you have any specifics? And then we, of course, go through the platforms itself. So I, for example, take care of Reddit. I screen the subreddit every single day. We have our main Discord where we have multiple people from Wargaming looking through the bug report section or player support section. So it's we just utilize that. So yeah.
It's awesome to hear that we are giving you value. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, of course. The thing is, I'm working as a community manager for a while now, and I never had the ability, or I never had a tool where you can really measure sentiment. It was always disconnected, I would say. It was always like, either you count the comments manually of a negative thing, or you have like a big subreddit thread that, I don't know, has like 3,000 upvotes and 700 comments, then something is on fire. But this just allows you to have a broad picture of your entire social media channels.
Also, it's what you're mentioning. It's something that we see a lot because there is a problem in the games industry, which is the fact that measuring sentiment is hard. Because, for instance, a player can say something like, "Yeah, I killed that person," and then obviously you would say in a general context that this is negative, but in this context, it's positive. So it is
Yeah.
really hard to have an accuracy in the sentiment.
Yeah, that's why we do the manual checks, of course. Like,
Yeah.
if you want to go into details, you have to do, the groundwork and go through the channels and check it for yourself. But to get like a big picture of what's going on, Affogata is great as a platform.
I'm happy to hear that. So I can see you're super connected to the players and you're constantly tracking and analyzing what they're saying about the game. So now it would be super interesting to hear how do you transfer all of this information to the rest of the company and how do other teams implement these changes according to the feedback. So you gave the example of you passing it to the developers in case you find a bug and things like this, but maybe you have another example of how this feedback is taken to optimize the game.
Sure. So we have weekly reports, which are just basically the report of the previous week, where we collect feedback on every single content change or hot topic that we had the previous week. I also have a direct line to my publishing director, who I'm talking to on a weekly basis as well, if there are any really like pressuring points that need to be addressed. We have like big company meetings with the entire publishing team included, and that way it allows us to weigh in on feedback, let the live ops team look over it. If it's, for example, something that would make sense, we forward these mails to our development team. Like every lead game designer is involved, some other people from the development team, and then they can consider if something can be done, if it makes sense, if we have the capability to do it in a certain, because you have to keep in mind that there is a certain roadmap and development time is very scarce. Like you don't have that much to expend for a year when it's planned. So they have to weigh and see like, okay, can we do it? Does it make sense? Does it benefit the player? How difficult it is to implement? And then they consider it. So Jira tasks being created, the development team, design team talk about this, if it makes sense. And then maybe in like 4 or 5 versions later, it comes. So we have a couple of features, for example, where I'm really excited about in the future, which have been requested by the players a lot, which we were able to implement through player feedback because players were asking for it. So I see that change is happening and that the players' feedback is being heard. So that's what is like the most important thing for me.
Definitely. That's awesome. And this may be the hardest question of all, and it's the last one. So if there would be a dream insight you could get from your players, what would it be?
So as a gamer myself, as a long-term gamer myself, I usually can relate a lot to the players when they provide feedback or when they are passionate about something. Yeah. But something what would be really, I think, useful for the entire industry is like, what makes a player stop playing the game after a session? What is the reason for it? Like, was there anything frustrating in the game? What made them quit? Was it something in real life? Is it they had enough of it? Or, what kind of caused someone to stop a session? That would, because you usually don't know. Yeah. Like, of course, there can be bad sessions where you play a game and you fail 10 times at the same task, and then you say like, well, Alt F4 or just close the game or just shut the console down. Yeah. But then, or you have enough, or you don't have enough things to do in the game, or it's repetitive. So I think that would be a great insight for the gaming industry itself if you could have this, because it would allow yeah, it would allow the developer to maybe change something based on that.
I agree. I really liked it because a few weeks ago I had a podcast and I asked the same question, and she said that she would love to know what makes a player stay in their first session. And now that you mentioned this, it is like, it's really interesting because both are super relevant. But in this case, it would really help the developers and the company to understand exactly what's wrong or how they're feeling and how to tackle this.
Yeah.
So I really like that answer.
Yeah. I mean, technically as a developer, you can find out at what point in the game someone left, like what kind of progress a player did before he canceled the session or before he went out of the game.
But not exactly the why.
Yeah, you don't understand what the player felt. Was it frustration? Was it joy? Was it rage? You know, was it because the player was exhausted? So
yeah,
that would be a nice insight to have, in my opinion.
I agree. And Kristian, I really want to thank you so much for taking the time to participate in today's podcast. It was so interesting to hear, first of all, your experience as a player and now as a senior community manager at Wargaming, and the power of player feedback from the community.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to join if you have the time or if you want to talk about something again.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's it for today. Let's Talk Customer Feedback is a podcast made for player insights professionals, player feedback enthusiasts, gaming industry experts, and anything in between. The podcast is created by Affogata, the AI-driven player feedback analytics platform that cuts through the noise and brings you the player insights that move the needle. In each episode, we have a special guest from the industry, including Affogata's own customers that share their knowledge on what player feedback and the voice of the customer means for them and the companies they work at. Follow Let's Talk Customer Feedback on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you'd like to know more about Affogata and what it does, go to affogata.com and get more info on our social media, searching for Affogata on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time. Don't keep your players waiting.